Meditation works for many reasons, one of which is that you close your eyes and you breathe as though your environment is safe. Good morning. The first thing you need to know is there are people that are not here. They partied too hard last night at a longevity conference. There's something in that. So are you guys excited? Good deal. I really am. This is a really fascinating topic. I will tell you, when I first started thinking about longevity, it was around about 1976, and it was not a happy occasion. In 1976, my babysitter was removed from her house and murdered. There we are. It's to start on a positive note, they always say. But, at 6 years old, that taught me about mortality. I think a lot of kids have the benefit of not realizing they're mortal until they get to 28. At 6 years old, I suddenly found myself realizing it came to an end. And then I started thinking about that, and I realized I was born in 1970, and I was born really close to the end of the century, and I set this goal as a kid to exist in 3 centuries. I thought it would be cool. I want to be alive in all 3 of them. But that meant that I had to make it to 130 to get there. And so that's how long, I've been thinking about this for a long time. How do you get there? So I have some thoughts for you. And then, by the way, then I saw Muhammad Ali. Some of you have probably seen a version of this, but it originated with Muhammad Ali, as far as I know. And Muhammad Ali does this, this beautiful thing where he'd say, look, I want you to imagine that this is your life. How much of it have you lived already? So that's what's left. And then how much of that are you going to sleep? About a third. And then how much of that are you going to work? About half of what's left. And then how much of that time are you going to spend filling out tax returns? Waiting in the dentist's office, sitting in the dentist's chair, getting a haircut, gossiping, wasting time, shopping for irrelevant things. So how much life do you really have left? It's fleeting. It's really fleeting. And so that gets me thinking about a number of things. A lot of us are sitting here going, wow, I've only got this much left. I want to make it longer. And I'm thinking, so many times people come to me in business and say, Eric, I want to expand my business internationally. And I'm like, okay, great. Why? I want to have an international business. I go, have you saturated the market you're in? Have you gone as far as you can in the country you're in before you expand out to other countries? So what I want to suggest to you is there's so much talk about let's extend it. But what if we just extend it from within the time we got? How many people out there, the muggles, the ones, they have jobs they hate. They do, they have jobs they don't like. So think about if they can find a way to find a job or a business or a passion they like, they instantly give themselves 8 hours of extra life every day. Does this make sense? And so there's another side effect of this, though, and that is that when you really enjoy your life, you send this message to your genes. I'm useful. I'm valuable. I should be here. And so when you enjoy your life more, I think you do a huge amount for your own longevity. Does that make sense? All right. So let's do this. Thank you very much. Never mind the rest of you. If you have 2 cars, you bought 2 cars, they have serial numbers that are sequential. They came off the line together. And you have 2 of them. You put one in the garage and you leave it there. And the other one you take out and you drive it 30, 40 miles a day. Which car is going to last longer? The one you drive. But cars aren't regenerative. How is it possible that using it is going to make it last longer? They're not. We're regenerative. Clearly, we have to use ourselves. But even cars need to be used in accordance with their design in order to last longer. If you don't use the car in accordance with its design, it doesn't last as long. And there are people out there in the world that spend more effort and more time and more focus and more care and more money taking care of their car than they do of their body. Why? So in WildFit, one of the things that we've done that's so effective is teaching people to really pay attention to what's going on inside their head. Everybody, when they first hear about WildFit, they come to me and go, Eric, tell me what to eat. And I go, oh man, it's just so not like that. It just so isn't like that. That's how the diet industry is broken. The diet industry is broken because they say, eat this and don't eat that. And then you attempt to apply some willpower to that. And how long does that last? Willpower. Yeah, if you're lucky, 2 days. I've seen people set food goals at like 11:30 on December 31st. And 2.5 hours later, they're smoking and drinking, right? Like, what's going on? So when I think about this car thing, what are the most common causes of death for cars outside of accidents? What are the most common causes of death for cars? Rust, the engine not getting maintained, the transmission dying. And so we do stuff to protect that. So I want to try a little experiment. Here's the experiment. I just want to make things a little bit real for a moment. I want you to think of a number between 1 and 10, but here's the thing. I want you to really try to randomize this because I would like the numbers to be very even through the room. So if you're normally a 7 person, I want you to just think outside the box. If you're never a 7 person, then maybe you know what to do. But I want you to think of a number between 1 and 10, and as soon as you've got your number, stand up. If your number is between 1 and 3, you represent the roughly 1/3 of people that are going to die from heart disease. Sit down. Luckily, heart disease, it doesn't generally create the same kind of suffering as other diseases. Often it's instant, so good job, guys. It's fantastic. They have put a lot less strain on the medical system than other people have because some of them just die instantly. They don't cost that much. But this next batch of people, 4, 5, and 6, you guys, you represent all the people that die of the variety of cancers that are out there in the world. Sit down. This is a different kind of death. This is a death that very often is unbelievably expensive on society and emotionally destroying to families. And it's lifestyle indicated, lifestyle caused, lifestyle influence, just like heart disease. If you are number 7 or 8, you represent the people that die what's called an iatrogenic death. Does anybody know what that is? A few people, they're doctors, they know what it means. It's a very fancy name for saying medical error. You won't even see it in many of the tables because they don't like it being reported, considering that in the Western world, it's like the 3rd or 4th highest cause of death. And then I want you to think about something. What percentage of doctor-induced or medical error-style death do you think actually gets reported as doctor-induced or medical death? I would guess less than half. Still, we'll just go with 7 and 8. Sit down. And 9, well, this is lower respiratory disease, unfortunately. It's the highest cause of death relative to communicable diseases, and you guys have died of some form of lower respiratory disease, or you represent the people that have. You guys can sit down. And if you're number 10, the odds are heavily against you dying a gorgeous death anyway. Accident, suicide now I'm terrified of myself. After Mia's talk, I come into the hotel room and I go, I better call a friend now. If you're number 10, there's a variety of different ways that you're going to die, but what I want you to think about is the way Stephen Covey passed away. Stephen Covey has a huge family, if I remember correctly, 12 children. And he'd been in an accident, and everybody was worried for his health because he was quite advanced in his years, and then he recovered. And then one night, he wasn't feeling so good. And he called his family around, and the family all gathered around, and he said goodnight to all of them, and then he went to bed, and he didn't wake up. Gorgeous. You guys that are the 10s, you represent, for me, the hope that each of us can design the most gorgeous exit that we could ever design. You guys can have a seat. Thank you. There's so much talk on our planet about life after death, right? I'm thinking, what about life during life? What about choosing the method with which you actually do end up leaving? And I think a great deal about why it is that people don't do that. What we found in WildFit so often is that people are making a decision for the now at the cost of the future. Is it true? So why do we do that? And so I want to give you a thought, because I'm going to share with you some general principles that I have about longevity. But before I share them with you, I don't want to share them with you the way the diet industry usually shares stuff. And it's not just about food, but what I mean is I don't want to just give you a bunch of rules that you may or may not follow or you may or may not apply willpower to. I want to give you a thought process. I want you to imagine that you have 2 personalities, kind of like the angel and devil, but one is a petulant teenager, and the other one is the sage. So when you're making a decision about how to live your life, which one of those two is making the decision for you? Because I'll tell you right now, I've seen many people, I'm not saying I've seen anybody in this room doing this. For some reason, many of you regard me as the food police. Like, yeah, I walk past your tables and you're like, oh shit, it's Eric. Right? Someone yesterday said, I was walking along with a croissant and I could feel your judgment. No, not my judgment, your own. But here's the thing. Why do we choose stuff that we know is not good for us? Why do we choose to not do the stuff that we know is good for us? Why? Why do we do that? Because the petulant teenager in a moment has a bit of a meltdown. And so I want you to think about that voice. I want you to think about like what drives you when you're faced with some food or you're faced with exercise. Like how many people in here have procrastinated exercise a little more often than maybe they should? Anybody? Yeah, that's the teenager. That's the teenager because the sage would say to you, you know what? Use it or lose it. Wouldn't it? And so I want you to think about that. Even really, like put it into practice here. You're like, oh, I'm on vacation. You know what? Elise and I, my wife and I, we found something fascinating about vacation. Vacation is a fantastic place to let your rules go. You can eat whatever you want, drink whatever you want, go out and have some fun, right? Then, unfortunately, what happened in our case is we decided to give up having a home, and we spent 2 years traveling all over the world, and we were on vacation permanently. That's not a path to longevity. So what I want you to think about, even here, even now, even after this talk, even the rest of the time, I want you to think a little bit about who's in control of the decision, the teenager or the sage. You'll hear the voice. It kind of goes like this. Imagine with food. But you're in Italy. Oh, look, some of you have a teenager inside you. Right? It's like it's a voice that's in there. And what we do is we quiet down the sage. The sage is like, yes, and you have to live in this body. You know, how many of you have heard of longevity escape velocity? Not so many. Longevity escape velocity is the idea that we are now adding to the lifespan with an accelerated rate that might mean that we start adding more time onto your lifespan than you're using. What would that mean? I was with Ray Kurzweil a couple of weeks ago, and he beamed into a mastermind that I'm a part of, and we got to have a really interesting conversation with him. And he believes that he has crossed over into longevity escape velocity. What that means is that right now we add about 2 months onto the human life expectancy each year. But it wasn't 2 months 5 years ago. It was like 1.5 months. So soon it'll be 3 months, and then it'll be 6 months. What happens when we start adding a year to human life expectancy each year? Longevity escape velocity. I don't know if this is real. I don't know if it can be done. But if Ray Kurzweil thinks it can be done, I tend to go with that as a possibility. He has made a number of interesting predictions about the world. But now we fall into this issue. So much of what we learn about longevity and health is about fixing. Oh yeah, we can get this shot. We can get this therapy. We can take this pill. And what I want to remind you of is that any of that stuff, for whatever it can achieve, it will do more for you if your body is in optimal health to begin with. The ultimate biohack is living in accordance with your body's design. This whole concept of biohacking, I think it's the most fascinating thing in the world. I've had some fabulous conversations with Dave Asprey about this. The challenge I have is so many people are going, well, I don't have to do this because I can just use this hack. Dr. Spock, you guys know I don't mean the pointy-eared one. I'm talking about the pediatrician, the famous pediatrician. He did an about face one day. He just realized that everything he'd been teaching people was wrong. And he said, no, do not give dairy milk to your children. Don't do it anymore. And of course, the dairy industry didn't really like that a whole lot. And then one of his friends, well, claims to be a friend, another doctor, said, I think he might be getting senile. And I saw this interview. The interviewer says, well, what's your advice? And he gave him some advice. And then the interviewer says, well, what about fruits and vegetables? I don't really like them. And he goes, me neither. I just take a multivitamin. And he's a doctor. I mean, I think somebody should take his piece of paper away. He shouldn't be a doctor, in my opinion, with that advice. I am thinking that the first thing we should be doing is taking care of our bodies, and then we can hack. Are you with me on this? So let's talk about taking care of our bodies. What is the number one thing you need for longevity? Just before water? Air. Right? Air. If you'd like to do an experiment, if anybody's very brave, hold your breath for 5 minutes. Let's see how that affects your longevity. I free dive. I can do a seriously deep dive to about 100 feet with about 2 minutes. But after that, I'm pretty sure I'd be dead. You got to have air. It's first. But not just air. The best quality air you can have. The best quality air. It doesn't mean, look, I know some of you live in cities and you're like, oh, I'm screwed then. No, your body needs that air whenever you can get it. It needs it. You know, Elise and I are fortunate enough to live on a beach where the air currents flow in from Africa across the Atlantic Ocean. Nothing cleans air better than friction. It's been proven that a ceiling fan is a better air filter than an air filter. And so as the air comes across the ocean into our garden, it's been filtered across. I'm so grateful for that. And then here's the other thing. Breathe properly. Your lungs, they seem to be designed badly. They're not, but it appears that they're designed badly. And that is that the little hairs that extract oxygen from the air you're breathing, they are sparsely scattered in the top of your lungs and thickly concentrated in the bottom of your lungs. This appears to be an incredibly bad design because the vast majority of people breathe up here all the time. Don't they? This is a conversation I often have with smokers. I have an unpopular theory that nicotine isn't actually addictive physically. That smoking is very much like sucking your thumb. And here's the basis of it. That if you quit heroin, you get sick. If you quit caffeine, you get headaches. If you quit alcohol, you get sick. If you quit any of those addictive drugs, you get sick. What happens when you quit cigarettes? You eat because you have an oral fixation, because you want to do something with your hands. This is what smokers are addicted to. I'll show it to you. Matter of fact, all of you do it with me. Take an imaginary cigarette or a Jamaican cigarette if you'd prefer. Imaginary cigarette. And then you spark that up, and then do this with me. Watch the way smokers do this. Watch them do this. They go, do that with me. Come on. Nice big inhale. Hold it a little at the top, and then let it out. Isn't that addictive? That's what they're addicted to. Because when you breathe like that, you oxygenate yourself properly, and we need more of that in our lives. The reason we need to do it consciously, where our ancestors didn't have to do it consciously, is our ancestors lived in a world where water was distant, food was distant, so they were forced to do a lot of movement, which forced them to breathe. We're not like that anymore. And so what we have to do is consciously breathe. We have to take time in our day to consciously breathe. I'll tell you something else too. Think about this. 2 Bushmen, 100,000 years ago, Africa. One of them is breathing like this. You can't see them, you can't see their environment, but you can hear them. And one of them is breathing like this. What do you know about his environment? It's a scary environment in that moment. The other Bushman, he's breathing like this. What do you know about his environment? Totally safe. No cortisol being produced, no adrenaline being produced. Meditation works for many reasons, one of which is that you close your eyes and you breathe as though your environment is safe. And when you breathe that way and you tell your body that the environment is safe, you're not producing all the stress chemicals. A couple of minutes of that a day can change your life completely.